Hi, welcome back. It's Anish Giri here. It's round 3 of the candidates, and here's your recap. What happened today? I'm going to tell you in a second. What were we looking forward to? We were looking forward to a big clash between Fiora, who had his first white game. He started with 2 draws to the black pieces. He was resilient and defending very well in 2 tough positions. So looking forward to start striking today against Hikaru, who is on a bit of an up wave, having come back yesterday against Timur Rajabov. And the other important game, I felt, very crucial game in fact, for the Chinese participant Dingli had a tough start, and today was his moment to try and strike back. White against Richard Rapport. Richard is a great player, don't get me wrong, but he does give chances. He plays very loose, he opens up, he's ready for an open fight, and that's where you can take your chances. And I think Dink was looking forward to this game. Big moment for him. If he takes a win, he's back in contention. If not, every missed little opportunity like that, that's making overall victory just further and further, and I think it was a very important day for him. The other intrigue was, I was curious if Timur Rajabov was going to change his strategy and try to go all out, or just try to play solid with white, which it doesn't seem very ambitious given he was trailing by half point already. And Fabi Duda, of course, Fabi, one of the leaders with the white pieces against young Krzysztof Duda, who is also a very adventurous player. Fabi surely looking to develop his lead. So I was excited, you were excited, we all were excited. Now let's see what happened. Fabi against Duda. That was my beloved Nidorf, so I had to cover this one obviously. And Fabiano came with this F3 variation, very principal line. He used to play it a lot, so not a big surprise there. And Duda shuffles between different lines, but goes for h5, which is in fact similar to a line I recommend in my Nidorf course for Chessable. There I play bishop to e7 first, but it could transpose after queen d2 and long castle, bishop e7. We are back in fact in my Nidorf course, because what I recommend in this particular instance transposes, because I basically recommend to develop the bishop first and Duda played the knight first. It has its own differences, but in case of white developing this way, it just doesn't. Here, after king b1, I stayed away from the move b5. I proposed a more neutral rook c8, not weakening the c6 square, because after b5, there is knight d5, bishop d5, ed, knight b6, and now takes, knight a5. And that's also what Fabi did, aiming for the c6 square. But after rook c8, he didn't have his lines quite fresh in his head. He was thinking for a long time, went for knight c6, somewhat of a bailout. c4 is principled, but after bc, knight c4, well, you have to know what you're doing with the white pieces, because there's the open b file. There's some potential for the bishop to come on the diagonal. I suspect Duda might have been well prepared. Maybe not, we don't know. But c4 is definitely something to look into if you analyze this line for white or black. Knight c6 allows us very famous thematic operation. Knight takes d5, undermining the knight. Knight takes e7, knight takes e7, knight had to leave the attack. And after queen d6, we've traded a bunch of stuff, and we get this endgame. Pawns are on 2 wings, so bishop should be better than knight, but the pawn structure is in itself in black's favor, because it's easier for him to create a passed pawn. For white, it's much harder, so the h-pawn can be annoying. So black's pawns are easier to push, and I think that sort of cancels out the advantage of the bishop over the knight, and the endgame is roughly equal. That's how I would describe it. In any case, Fabi not only got nowhere near anything here, he even got slightly worse, like especially after already he was a bit uncomfortable. The c4 before, it looks pretty bad because knight is very strong. But of course, Fabi, he knows that it's not so simple, and this gave him some sort of stability, and he could bring the king in, and eventually he managed to make a draw quite comfortably with white, but there was nothing more on the cards. I think c5 was, by the way, very accurate, giving away the pawn, but after bishop c4 check, the f7 pawn will be hanging, and after ef gf, the king gets the square. And after b3, it's important that after there's bishop c4 check immediately, or after king takes c5, bishop c4. So everything worked out for Fabi, and this is just a draw. Players just quickly simplified everything. I have a feeling that Fabi didn't want to take many risks here. It makes sense. He's on +1. He got a little out of book with this b5 business. He definitely expected rook c8, which is universally considered the sort of the right move order. And yeah, this b5 slightly took him took him aback. Also because Duda, besides knight plays all kinds of other things. So nowadays it's very hard to guess your opponent's opening, and then one of the sidelines can sort of take you out of your prep. And then the question then becomes, are you ready to play a full-fledged game without prep against someone who you think might be prepped? And you are ready if you want to take risks, and if you don't, like Fabi in this round, yeah, you just don't. You can find a more in-depth look at the opening of today's game between Fabian Caruana and Jan Krzysztof Duda in my Chessable Game of the Day course, since it's a Nidorf and it's one of my favorite openings and the one on which I have made a giant Chessable course. I have a lot to share about the opening, so I went in more detail on my Chessable Candidates course. You can watch that if you are a pro member on Chessable, a pro user. So do check that out, please, and take a look at that. Besides the Game of the Day, you also get access to puzzles and all the Chessable perks. So do please check that out. The link will be definitely all over the place. So click that, take a look at my Chessable Candidates course, and enjoy. Now let's go back to the games. So perhaps the most uneventful game would appear to be a game of Rajabov against Nepomniachtchi. I wanted to show it to you, obviously, as I'm showing all the games, but I thought for this game I'll try to use it as an example of what top level preparation looks like and the kind of thoughts and tricks we resort to when we prepare against our opponents. Now, Timo played d4, knight f6, c4, e6, knight f3, d5, and here g3, the Catalan. And Jan has played bishop e7 in his World Championship match and in the subsequent tournaments. And he experienced some trouble there. He lost to Wesley. So, in fact, he played the same land against me as well in a World Rapid and Bliss tournament where he already suffered. He managed to make that draw in that game, but he suffered, and then finally he lost in that very same line against Wesley. So, in Grand Chess Tour, and it was kind of clear that he might want to change the variations here. And the giveaway was the first round. Now let me take you through that. In the first round, his opponent Dingli played the move 1 c4. Now Jan, he had the repertoire of going knight f6, knight c3 and e5, which he showed in games after the World Championship match. This is the position, knight f3 and c6, the position he is happy with. One of the big tabias, one of the options, and he was happy with that. Now, he was always starting with knight f6. But in the first game, he started with e5, which gave Ding an opportunity to go g3. And then knight f6 is no longer the same because after this development of both the knights, now, because the bishop is already here, the d5 move is prevented. And that is a crucial difference. And so against e5, g3, you have to do something else. And Jan did c6 and was well prepared and even won that game. But this was a big giveaway. So if you are preparing in a smart way, you're going to think, why did he allow that extra option of going g3? Because you can say what you want, but chess players, we are lazy people. We don't want to learn an extra line if it's not needed for our repertoire. So I was thinking, if he plays knight f6, knight c3 is not what's bothering him, because you can do the same thing after e5. You can also play knight c3 and you get the same position, like that or like that. What's bothering him are the other moves. It can't be d4, because d4 you can play on move 1. It's got to be knight f3 or g3. Now after knight f3, previously he played e6, g3, d5, bishop g2, bishop e7. Castle, castle, and d4. That's the Catalan with bishop e7. But he no longer wants that. Because probably he wants a different variation against the Catalan. And that's why he plays a different variation against the English. And that's why you could have tried to guess what he would play in this game. And you could anticipate that probably he would switch to one of the other popular lines, which is either d takes c4, c5, or bishop b4 check. And so when he took on c4 and bishop g2 went c5, now Timur spent some time here with castling and some time deciding on dc, and he was clearly surprised, didn't manage to pose any problems. Now I think he should have tried to be a little more deductive, a little more clever, I would say. I don't know how to say what is the nice word for that, but just to try to be a step ahead of Jan's prep and not be surprised by this line, because in fact Jan kind of showed his cards in the first game. You just had to dig a little deeper. But for this game, Timur didn't bring any special novelties. He went for the endgame, which in itself is not the wrong thing to do. But in this endgame, which is very theoretical, he wasn't able to pose any problems. He played bishop e3, knight d5, bishop d4, c5, and black really simplified. This doesn't look like a big try to me. This is all theory played in many games, and I think if he had prepared, he could have posed just a little problems. And in this variation, I know from experience, a small problem is already a big problem, because black will have to defend long and tenacious, and as we had seen already in some of the games, it's not easy to defend long and tenacious. But again, small misprep on the part of Rajabov could have been avoided if he tried to be a little more clever in his prep. Now nothing happened after c5. Everything got traded, and the game in itself had absolutely nothing interesting about it. Just traded everything, but something perhaps new for you. So the kind of tricks that the top player uses when preparing, try to understand what your opponent prepared. Try to sometimes even by looking at the d4 opening, you can try to estimate what line he would play against e4. There are certain opening couples that people often choose, like they choose Berlin together with the Queen's Gambit, they choose the Najdorf, with the Greenfield. All these little combinations that sort of make up a whole repertoire. So yeah, that's that. Maybe something interesting for you from this otherwise not very exciting game. Next, we go look at the game Dingli and Richard Rapport. I had high hopes for Ding. I told you about that already. It was an important game, and he did have his chances. He went d4, and Richard played Greenfield. Very surprising. I wouldn't think that Greenfield would suit Richard's style, in the sense that it's a very, very concrete opening, and he is usually more of a sideline kind of guy. He's trying to do something unusual, try not to follow the computer paths. While in Greenfield, you kind of have to do that. You have to follow the computer paths. You have to sort of follow the mainstream theory. So I'm not sure how much expected Greenfield was, but Ding Liren is a d4 player. He is always well prepared, and he had the line ready for this. He took on d5 and played the bishop c4 92, the main line, which is very harmonious. When I first faced Greenfield as a youngster, I very quickly lost my center control. Like, I put the knight obviously on f3. Then after c5, eventually it got pinned, and I just couldn't resist all the pressure with c5, knight c6, bishop g4. My center just collapsed, and I thought like, wow, this Greenfield is a brilliant invention. White is just collapsing. Then my coach showed me, no, you can play bishop c4, and put a knight on e2, and if it ever gets pinned, you can play f3. And I was like, wow, that's very nice. Yes, ever since everybody played many games, I played myself many games with white. b6 is a main variation nowadays. Just want to develop the bishop, not afraid of giving up this pawn. This is a major theory, possible to try it with white, but black has found ways to play. So white just keeps control of the center, goes for rook c1, queen d2, maybe bring rook to d1. And the very important idea in these structures is this h4, h5, h6 push. That's something that AlphaZero reinforced and brought back into fashion, this push of the side pawn. And that's very much an idea in these kind of positions. But first, some consolidation. Bishop b5 is a very clever move. This is one I played as well. The bishop steps out of knight a5 in advance, and d5 push becomes a lot more relevant. It also steps out of knight e5. Black played rook c8, queen d2, and now cd, queen d6. Played pretty quickly. Rapport still in book. It's one of the moves I always find it a little bit odd. Queen is sort of aiming for b4, although after queen b4 I've got queen d3, so it's a little bit odd. A bit more natural are moves like e6 and move the knight away, perhaps trade a pair of rooks and so on. But queen d6, nothing wrong with that. Rook d1, and now queen b4, queen d3, e6. Again, I don't know if it was prep. It was no longer prep. I think Richard spent a lot of time on this move. He probably mixed something up a little bit. And yeah, after h4, he went for a very risky move, rook fd8. And after bishop g5, he had to answer a very unpleasant question, and he sacrificed the exchange. And two bishops and the pawn often is enough compensation for an exchange, but yeah, in this particular case, you're fighting for a draw, and it seems that, especially thanks to this h pawn being quite annoying, potentially going for h6 when the back rank could be an issue later on. Yeah, especially with that h pawn, this material advantage can be decisive for white. And indeed, Ding had his chance after bishop e5, a4, king g7, king f1. Takes. Always be careful. You are not like Hikaru Nakamura. You might miss a strong intermezzo. There's takes, but there's also takes and then here and then there. and then here, and then there, and this GG. So after queen takes d8, knight c1, queen g5 is very strong. We're not only attacking the bishop, we're also threatening mate in 2 after h6, which happens here. And that is quite an issue. And queen e4 could have been an issue for Ding, but after bishop e2, queen g2, king e1, it seems that somehow, although I have to say this doesn't look obvious to me, but somehow the king escapes, and I think bishop f4, h6 is likely the reason why he does so. Not an obvious variation, but something Ding is capable of finding. He played queen e2 though very quickly, so I guess well, I spent time on king f1, so I guess he thought about all that. But yeah, he missed a clear win here with queen d8 according to the engine. After queen e2, he also got a chance. Richard played a6, now takes queen e4, and here it was an important moment. Ding played rook e1, but he could have played queen e2, brought the queen back in a much better version, consolidating the position and chasing the queen away. If the queen goes here, you can even chase it further, and in this version of the endgame, it can be tricky for black as he is struggling to establish the bishop on the c5 square, and the queen is also kind of out of place. Even here you can just take and play king g1. It would be much better than rook e1, because here somehow the queen is still annoying and you have to smoke it out, and it's not easy, because if you try this move queen e4, the queen comes to d2 and it stays annoying. You can keep chasing it, you can chase it with the rook, but it keeps giving checks, it keeps going back and forth, and being around the left side of the board where the pawns are, while after rook e1, queen e2, sorry, after queen e2, queen f5, the queen would be sort of on this side of the board, and that's a bit far from this pawn. So kind of a small nuance that really changes the evaluation from kind of winning to kind of a draw. So kind of a huge miss of the day, obviously, by Ding. And yeah, no longer there was anything. Then they got the bishop on d4, an ideal square, defending this pawn, attacking this pawn, and after eventual e5, there was nothing more to worry about. Ding just gave the exchange back and drew. Big opportunity missed, and that's something you have to understand in a tournament like that. If you see, for example, that all games finish in a draw, it's not that nothing happened. A lot of things happened. Ding missed a huge opportunity, and giving up a white game like that, and even having chances and then drawing, that's a big setback. It's not a loss, but it's sort of a mini loss. And if you, for example, follow the odds of the players, you will see that even though they all draw, the odds are shifting. So things happen. Now let's move on to the next one. Last but definitely not least, Fiora against Hikaru. I was very excited about this one. D4, knight f6, c4, e6, and Fiora comes with the queen c2 nimso. Very principled line, and known for, on one hand, being very drawish, because a lot of the forced lines of this opening lead to a draw. On the other hand, some of these drawish lines, they're quite hard to recall, and by now there are like more and more drawish lines. First there was like 2, then there are 3, 4, 5, 6, and by now there are like a dozen of forced lines that black has to remember, and it's become very annoying for black players to face, because he has to remember all of those drawish lines, and well, the question is then, do you remember them actually? And Fiora came up with a new try today in one of the sidelines. After castle a3, takes d5, bishop g5. Hikaru just takes and plays b6 here. It's also possible to do other things like c5, and after takes b6, rook d1, bishop a6, queen a4, h6, bishop h4, queen a7. We're still following games of Hikaru. He has a few games here. Knight f2, rook d8. Now, important moment, Fiora comes up with a strong, well, not strong as such, all the moves are of equal value, but with a surprise, which in itself is a very important thing in modern chess. Surprise move, surprise novelty, queen c2. Very interesting. Now, obviously black is going to go c5, that was the entire idea, and now e4. Bishop f1, rook f1, g5, knight takes g5, g bishop g5. It looks original, but I had seen this before, and for a second I thought like, hang on a second, is Fiora just repeating a game of Lek Wang Lim against Hikaru? Then I realized this is not exactly the same thing. That game was e4, bishop f1, rook f1, g5, knight g5, g bishop g5, and here we've got c5, queen c2 included. And that is really annoying for a player like Hikaru, for anyone who's facing this kind of idea, because there you know what you do, but here you know it's different. And you want to do the same thing as you do there, but now you realize it's very different because the same line doesn't work because of something. and then you realize you probably have to find a different solution. You don't know what the solution is, and the ghost of the other line is still messing with your head. It's quite annoying. Hikaru spent a lot of time in this position. Actually, not yet here. He started spending time later. He spent a lot of time in this position. I think maybe he was still aware of this, or probably he was preparing it after g5, calculating it in advance. But he definitely didn't expect queen c1, which Firouzja played pretty quickly. And now he was in a tank, and Hikaru was spending lots of time in this game. If I look at the time situation, I think he was definitely on the verge. He was under pressure on the board, but also on the clock, and it was truly a great feat that he has achieved in this game. Not to lose it, because after rook d4, rook d4, knight d4, queen f4, he first found this sequence of check, 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 takes, and an endgame. It is drawish, equal pawns, relatively few pieces, but it's tricky. White has a passed h-pawn and the bishop that works well on two flanks. Unlike the game of Fabi against Duda, White does have a better pawn structure here because he's got this passed pawn already. So the bishop on two flanks works really well, and this was a very unpleasant endgame. Hikaru had little time for, like he had more than an hour disadvantage, but he managed to hold it actually very, very narrow margin. Here, the engine sort of allows the connected passed pawns with e5, g4, f4. Claims black has enough counterplay here, but it's not obvious. Hikaru went for counterplay on the queen side, trying to simplify potentially situation, go b5, a5, b4, and c3, and get rid of all the queenside pawns, keep only a passer. Firouzja pushed g4, now he's got two connected passed pawns, quite tricky. b5, rook d1, takes, a5, h5. Now this looked really scary, but Hikaru was on it. Rook g8, rook f1, king e8, h6. You might think you blundered this move because rook g5, h7, just queens, but no, Hikaru was once again on it, rook f8, allowing a trade of rooks, and then it turned out that this endgame is holding. In hindsight, maybe Firouzja could have tried something else, brought a rook somewhere to another square and keep playing with the rooks, but he thought this is winning, but it actually doesn't. After bishop d8, a4, pawn was hanging, g5, he got his pawns really far. Now all he needs is bring the bishop to this diagonal and it's GG, but there is no easy way to do so because it's just not easy. You can just see for yourself. I was thinking about bishop h4, g3, but I realized after bishop h4 there is a move e5, and after bishop g3 there is a move knight f4 in certain versions. And very importantly, Hikaru starts with the move c3. And now he's simplifying further and creating one more passed pawn. And Firouzja really tried very hard here. He spent a full hour looking for a win in this position, rightly so, but there seems that there wasn't one available at this point. Very, very narrow escape there by Hikaru. See the game, how it continued. Yeah, this move e5 it is a nice move to make. Now you potentially have two passers, one here and one here, and already you feel that the game is slipping out of control. There is the idea of knight f4, not immediately because of bishop f6 check, but the moment bishop gets sort of deflected somewhere, distracted, you've got knight f4 idea, and so Hikaru just waits. Yeah, there was no win, but king e1 allows b4 and a3, which is just a draw on the spot. The bishop once again is not in time to come to the long diagonal because knight is in time for this knight d3, f4, g6 thing. Very narrow, very important escape for Hikaru, and a big miss. I wouldn't even say miss. Firouzja did nothing really wrong in this game. He tried really hard, but it's a pity for him and his fans because he had hopes for his first white games to actually start chasing the leaders. And that concludes all the games for today. Tomorrow is a rest day. And before rest day, you don't think about your next game. You try to relax a little bit. Well, you still think about the next game, but you try to relax. It's very important in an event like that to take good rest. Just consolidate where you are. Look around, see who is doing what's going right, what's going wrong. If you need, maybe take a little day off, do something crazy, take a walk, or I don't know, go to a bar or whatever you need to get your mind right for important battle. Day after tomorrow, another big round. Rapport against Nakamura, both on 50%, both crazy players. could be anything happening there. And if one of them wins, he's going to likely join the pack of leaders. So big day for two players coming up there. Nepo against Firouzja is a big clash. Jan, half point ahead of Firouzja, realizes that probably he shouldn't take too many risks with a wacky youngster. But, you know, Jan, very ambitious guy, so we'll see what happens there. Duda against Rajabov. Duda on 50%. It's a moment for him to make a statement. If he wants to fight for tournament victory, this will be the day for him to make his to make a mark there. And a very big game, very big game coming up. Ding against Fabiano Caruana. The reason is big. If Ding beats Fabi, they are level. And I do recall in the last candidates, Ding had the white pieces. He did beat Fabiano. And Ding is a tough opponent for anyone. Fabi knows that. He's very well prepared. Fabi always likes to surprise people. He tries to be creative. Ding usually handles surprises quite well. So I am curious about this game. It is a huge game for Ding. If he wins that one, he's back. All his sins are forgiven. He's back in 50%, beaten one of the leaders, pulled him down, which is also very important. If he does not win that game, then we will be really worried for him because he will remain on -1. And if somehow Fabi takes over and wins, by the way, that's also huge for Fabi. So big things coming up, but first we'll rest tomorrow. We'll rest from all the recaps. I hope nobody will bombard you with recaps for tomorrow. I'm probably not going to make one. Hope my competitors are also not going to make one because that would be unfair. Maybe I should do some video. I should do some kind of stupid short video tomorrow about something, but no recap. So thank you for watching. Take a rest and see you the day after tomorrow. This is absolutely epic candidates tournament, and you have to be following it. If you don't I don't know, this outro gets completely out of hand. Thank you for watching. Just bye bye.